Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
All right, we're live. Welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast, Mountain Buck Q&A edition, and this podcast is brought to you by Timber Ninja Outdoors. The way this podcast works is different from the weekly show, and it's just a short 10 to 20 minute episode that's answering your questions based on my experiences, what I've had all around big woods mountain bucks. If I don't think I have a good way to answer the question, I just won't answer it and we'll move along. But this is some things that I feel are important. I've chose these questions out of the ones that have been asked that I think really relate to the time of year, as well as a lot of different experiences. So most of the questions up until this point that have come in have been a bunch of different questions that I've pulled and basically put into one to be able to answer on the show. Now this one comes from an individual, Ryan Gauntner, that sent it in via email here, and he had a couple of questions here that I thought were really good, and I wanted to answer it specifically and directly with that question. If you have any questions, by the way, please send them into my email, beau@eastmeetswesthunt.com, and put in the subject line Mountain Buck Q&A so I can find them there and organize it and do all that stuff. But anyways, so Ryan wrote in, for big woods hunters who are walking way back in, do you care about foot noise? Drives me crazy trying to get way back in before light and crunching leaves and whatnot. I've observed deer a number of times shortly after I've made what I considered too much noise. Just wondering your opinion. Also, what kind of wind and access? I've been using it on a macro level and calling a whole area off limits if the wind is going that way. For example, if I have an east wind, I'd hunt the east side of the patch with the wind in my face, but not the west. But you could theoretically go in the west and position yourself so that the location has a good wind for you. Would you do that? Do you hunt the wind on a micro level, such as the wind is bad for the walk-in, but good for the trail and scrape/bed you would be set up on? Would you hunt that or wait till the wind was good for access and the micro hunting location? So this is a really good question, and it's kind of a complicated answer, so I'm going to do my best to be able to answer this. I'll start with the first one about foot noise. So foot noise, especially if you get in an area with a bunch of oak trees and you get into November and most of the leaves have fallen off the trees and you haven't had much rain in a while, it's extremely loud to be able to walk through the woods. And I do care about that for access when it comes to moving in for an evening sit or an afternoon in the daylight and walking, or trying to scout and still hunt. Man, it doesn't help you. There's no sneaking along there. And I do think that does bother it. Now, if you're accessing at night before, a morning sit or anything, I tend not to worry about it as much. And I don't really even try to walk slow or move, really methodically. It's just like, get to where you're going. You're making noise no matter what. Do it. Try not to snap every stick out there, but just get to your location where you're going to. And because I tend to find, and we talked about it in the headlamp Q&A a little bit, but deer don't really get bothered as much as at night. And I'm not saying gray light, I'm saying at night. So a good hour before it even starts breaking light, or even earlier than that, to be able to get in. At that point, I don't really worry about it as much from the sound aspect of it. But I definitely think foot noise is a big deal. And one thing that you can do with the afternoon ones, and this is something I learned from Johnny Stewart when I hunted with him a few years back, was it was super noisy and we were coming out to this point, and he did the process that he's called heel to toe. So you just heel toe as you're coming down through. So that's one way to be able to access in, to be able to do that once you get closer to the tree. I haven't done it a whole lot myself. That's something that has worked for Johnny, and I've done it with him, and it makes a whole lot of sense because you're not sounding like a human as you're walking through the woods. So that's one option there. That's kind of my thoughts with noise. Now going to wind and access. So I've been, this is the complicated one because access wind is really important to me depending on the time of year, what type of access, and the time of day of access, and also considering thermals into that mix. So if I were to be going to a place that, let's use your example here, Ryan. So you said if you'd hunt the east side of a patch of, say, laurel that was on a hill there, being able to access it, to come in there and being worried about coming in from the east there, or coming in from the east. So I try to go in with the wind in my favor, but you got to understand if you're on any sort of steep hill or anything there at night and it's not wind, if the winds are less than 10 miles an hour, you're probably going to be dealing with a whole lot of thermals there. So you can still access from that side and not have a problem getting in. Now, when it comes the afternoon, then obviously if the sun is beating on whatever side of that hill would be, like an east facing ridge, then you're probably going to have more of an upward thermal pull, and that wouldn't be the case no matter which way the wind was blowing on that particular side. So you got to think about that, throw that all in there. And the other thing is type of access. So there's many places that I've hunted over the years that have a sort of a gated road, or some sort of a hiking trail that's going through an area. Now, I will use those trails and those roads, even if the wind is not correct, to go to a certain area and then cut back off of that trail once I'm past the point and having the wind in my favor to walk back towards the location, if that makes any sense, because those deer are so used to people either walking down those roads, mountain biking, doing whatever for recreational activities. I don't think they're that concerned with it, and they may even be watching it at that point. And I don't feel that has a whole lot of impact. So I will walk past an area on a road to get into a place, not worried about kind of where my scent's blowing at that particular time. And then when I get off of that trail, that's when it's really important to me. So that's a way I've been able to kind of, quote unquote, cheat that system to be able to go and get to my spot where sometimes it's not always great for access on wind. Now, the other time is, the time of day for access. So, walking at the night, again, that's a little bit less important to me as far as which way the wind is going. Now, I do think that deer have a more keen sense of awareness for smell than they do the eyesight at night as far as detecting danger. So I'm paying attention to a lot more, but I would be more willing to take a little bit of a risk walking in the dark than I would be walking in the daylight to go through there. And you got to think too of like where those deer are going to be at. Just because you're coming in and you're hunting the scrape and your wind might be blowing that direction as you're heading in, those deer might not be there at that particular time. So that's something that I think about quite a bit. Like, so there's an example where a spot that I'd been hunting where there's a newer clear cut that's pretty open that they seem to be feeding on at night. Now, I'm not going to walk through that no matter what the wind's doing at night to access a location, but when I'm heading in for an evening sit and I'm heading in the afternoon, now I'm going to use that location to be able to get in versus going on the back side of the bedding or whatever I think that they're laying down for the day. So that's something that I would consider. And then also the time of year. So the rut is kind of a little bit of a differentiator here. Like I am more willing to take risks if I have to. the way I look at everything is I try to find the best access no matter what the time of year and stay disciplined with it. But when the rut comes around and I can't access, say there's private land on one corner and I can't come in from this bottom, or I can't come from this way because I think they're feeding here or whatever, I'm a lot more willing to take a risk because I'm looking for deer that are cruising through that area. I'm not hunting bedding or specific buck bedding, I guess I should say. So that's something that I definitely play into my thoughts as far as access goes. So really, I would ask yourself, and what I ask myself is, the time of year, the type of access, time of day, and what are the thermals going to be doing, and that's how I'm going to go in. So it's a little bit of I start from a macro level, and then I kind of peel it down to a micro level on how I'm heading in there and accessing it. So hope that wasn't too confusing. Hopefully that helped you out a little bit here. I appreciate everybody listening to the podcast here in these Q&A episodes. As I said earlier, if you have any questions, send them in to beau@eastmeetswesthunt.com with Mountain Buck Q&A in the subject line. If you enjoy the podcast, please share it with your friends, family, anyone that you think that would benefit from it, and leave a rating and review. Good luck.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.